I stood there drenched in wine, while my husband's mistress laughed in my face at a family party. Everyone joined in, even my mother-in-law. My husband? He just watched. But then my father-in-law stood up, and what he revealed next made every single person in that room regret their cruelty. Before I tell you what happened, hit that like button because this story will show you that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Subscribe so you never miss stories about real justice. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. My name is Ariana, and 3 years ago I thought I was living a fairy tale. I met Cameron at a charity fundraiser where I was volunteering after a long shift at the hospital. I was a pediatric nurse back then, working night shifts to help sick children fight their battles. Cameron walked up to me that evening, all charm and confidence, and told me I had the kindest eyes he'd ever seen. Within 6 months, we were married. Within a year, I was pregnant with our son, Ethan. Cameron convinced me to quit my job. He said he wanted to take care of me, that I deserved to rest, to enjoy life, to focus on being a mother. He painted this picture of a perfect life where I wouldn't have to worry about anything. And honestly, I believed him. I believed every word. We lived in this gorgeous mansion with a garden that looked like something out of a magazine. Cameron drove expensive cars, wore designer suits, and talked about his real estate empire like he'd built it with his own 2 hands. Everyone envied us. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. But 6 months ago, everything changed. Cameron became distant, cold. He was always on his phone, always hiding the screen when I walked into the room. He took calls at midnight and claimed they were important business matters. I started finding things, hotel receipts in his jacket pockets, text messages from someone saved as just N with heart emojis. There were photos of them together at fancy restaurants I'd never been to. My gut told me what my heart didn't want to accept. My husband was having an affair. When I finally confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. He just looked at me with this blank expression and said, "Natalie makes me feel alive again. You've become boring since Ethan was born. All you do is talk about diapers and cartoon shows. She understands my ambitions." Those words cut deeper than any knife ever could. I begged him to end it, to think about our son, to remember the vows we made. But he refused. He said he'd do what he wanted, but he wouldn't divorce me because of how it would look. So there I was, trapped in a marriage with a man who didn't love me but wouldn't let me go. Then came the invitation to William's 75th birthday party. William is Cameron's father, and this was going to be huge. The entire family, business associates, friends, at least 60 people gathering at the family estate, this sprawling property with perfectly manicured gardens and fountains that looked like they belonged in a palace. I didn't want to go. The thought of pretending to be happy while my marriage crumbled made me sick. But I had to protect Ethan from seeing any family drama, so I put on a brave face and decided to attend. What I didn't know was that Cameron had invited her, Natalie, his mistress, to his father's birthday party. I arrived wearing a simple cream-colored dress, nothing fancy, just comfortable and appropriate. I was holding Ethan's hand, trying to smile and greet family members when I saw her walk in. Natalie entered that party like she owned the place, wearing this stunning silver gown that probably cost more than my car, with diamonds dripping from her neck and ears. My heart stopped. I looked at Cameron in disbelief, but he just avoided my eyes. He actually brought his mistress to a family event and introduced her as his senior business partner. Margaret, my mother-in-law, had never liked me. She thought Cameron should have married someone from their social circle, a lawyer's daughter or a politician's niece. To her, I was just a nurse, someone beneath their status. She barely acknowledged Ethan, her own grandson. But when she met Natalie, her entire face lit up. She embraced Natalie like a long-lost daughter and gushed about how brilliant and sophisticated she was. Margaret barely glanced at me that entire evening. The bullying started subtly. Natalie positioned herself near me and made little comments that seemed innocent to others but cut deep. "Oh, Ariana, that dress is so comfortable. I love how you don't try too hard." Margaret laughed and added, "Ariana prefers simple things." Cameron stood right there, hearing everything, and said absolutely nothing. Then Natalie asked me in front of a group of people, "So what do you do all day, Ariana?" "Oh, right, you stay home. That must be nice." I couldn't imagine not having career ambitions. Margaret chimed in. "Well, some women are just natural homemakers." The group laughed uncomfortably, and I felt my face burn with humiliation. During cocktail hour on the terrace, things got worse. Natalie loudly discussed business with Cameron, making sure everyone could hear. "Remember our trip to Paris last month? That deal was incredible." My stomach dropped. They went to Paris together. Margaret gushed about how wonderful it was that Cameron had someone who understood his work, then looked directly at me and said, "Not everyone can keep up with ambitious men." Then came the moment that changed everything. Guests had gathered near the fountain, and I stood alone while Cameron and Natalie talked and laughed together. Natalie walked up to me holding a full glass of red wine. She leaned in close and whispered, "You know, Ariana, Cameron told me something interesting. He said marrying you was his biggest mistake." My eyes filled with tears, and then, with everyone watching, she threw the entire glass of wine directly at me. The cold liquid hit my face, soaked my hair, drenched my dress. Red wine dripped down my neck and stained the cream fabric. The terrace went completely silent. Natalie gasped dramatically, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." But her eyes were smiling. She wasn't sorry at all. And then the worst part, people started laughing. Margaret laughed the loudest, saying, "Well, at least red is better than cream." Cameron's siblings chuckled nervously. Some guests tried to hide their smirks. And Cameron? He just stood there, frozen, doing absolutely nothing to defend me. Little Ethan started crying because he was scared. I was shaking, dripping, completely humiliated in front of 60 people. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to run. But then, through my tears, I saw William. He'd been sitting quietly in his chair near the fountain all evening, just watching everything unfold. Our eyes met, and his face looked like it was carved from stone. Slowly, he stood up. And when he did, the laughing stopped immediately. William's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Enough!" Just one word, but it commanded absolute attention from every single person there. He walked slowly toward the center of the terrace, and every eye followed him. "I've seen quite a show tonight," he said, his voice calm but carrying this dangerous edge that made everyone nervous. Cameron looked confused and said, "Dad, what are you—" But William held up his hand, and Cameron's mouth snapped shut. "I built everything from nothing 45 years ago," William began. "I came to this country with $200 in my pocket. I worked 3 jobs to start my first property investment. Everything you see here, this estate, the business, the lifestyle you all enjoy, I built it with my own hands." Cameron interrupted, "Dad, we know your history." William's eyes turned cold. "Do you really, son? Do you really know?" He pulled out some documents from inside his jacket, and I saw Cameron's face go pale. "Cameron, tell everyone here how much of the business you actually own." Cameron stammered, I run the operations, I manage—" William cut him off. "I asked how much you own." The silence was deafening. Cameron said quietly, I assumed." William's voice was like ice. "You assumed wrong. You own nothing. Not one single share, not one property, nothing." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Natalie's confident smile started to crack. William continued, pulling papers from the folder. "These are the company ownership documents. I own 100% of everything. The real estate company, mine. The investment portfolio, mine. The commercial properties across 3 states, mine. Every single asset is in my name." Then he turned to Natalie, and I saw fear flash across her face. "This mansion you think Cameron provides? I own it. It's in my name. The cars Cameron drives, leased through my accounts. The country club membership, my corporate account. His credit cards, connected to my banking. Every dollar he spends comes from my approval. He has nothing without me." But William wasn't done. He pulled out another folder and looked directly at Natalie. "I know exactly who you are, Natalie Christine Foster, born in Ohio, convicted of fraud in 2019. You've targeted 4 wealthy men in 3 years. You're not a business consultant. You dropped out of community college. You're a con artist and not even a good one." Natalie's face turned bright red. She tried to speak, but no words came out. People started whispering, pulling away from her. Margaret looked like she'd been slapped. William turned to his wife. "You embraced this woman. You mocked your own daughter-in-law. You laughed while she was humiliated. You never gave Ariana a chance because you thought she wasn't good enough for this family." Margaret started crying, her makeup running down her face. "William, I didn't know." He shook his head. "You didn't want to know. You chose cruelty over kindness." Then came the moment that stopped my heart. William signaled to a man standing near the house, his lawyer, who stepped forward carrying a leather portfolio. "I'm making changes tonight," William announced, "in front of all of you as witnesses. Everything I own, every property, every business, every investment account, I'm signing it over tonight." Cameron's eyes lit up with hope. He actually smiled, thinking his father was giving everything to him. But William walked past his son and came directly to me. I was still standing there, drenched in wine, shaking, confused. William placed the documents in my trembling hands and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "This mansion, yours, the business, held in trust for Ethan, with you as trustee until he turns 25. The investment accounts, yours. The properties, the assets, everything, yours and Ethan's." The crowd erupted. Cameron shouted, "What? Dad, you can't do this!" William turned to him with a look of such disappointment. "I absolutely can, and I am. 3 years ago, you brought home a woman who gave up her career to support you. Ariana worked night shifts, saving children's lives. She quit because you promised to provide for her. She gave you a beautiful son. She asked for nothing but love and respect. Tonight, I watched her be treated like garbage by you, by this fraud, by my own wife, and she stood there with dignity, protecting her child while you did nothing." William's voice broke slightly. "You want to know what a real man does? A real man protects his family. A real man honors his commitments. A real man doesn't stand silent while his wife is humiliated. You failed as a husband and as a father. You have nothing now except what Ariana chooses to give you." That's when Natalie completely lost it. She screamed at Cameron, "You told me you were rich. You said you owned everything. We were supposed to get married after you divorced her. You promised me the Paris apartment." Everyone stared as she revealed their entire plan. She grabbed her purse and ran out, screaming obscenities, her heels clicking frantically against the stone terrace. Cameron fell to his knees in front of his father, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, please, I'll change. I made a mistake." William's voice was ice. "Tell that to your wife, not to me." Cameron turned to me, and I just stood there, holding those papers, looking at this man I thought I knew. I said nothing. What could I possibly say? Margaret rushed over, sobbing, mascara everywhere. "Ariana, please forgive me. I was so wrong about you." I looked at her coldly. "You laughed when she threw wine on me. You mocked me in front of everyone. You never once held your grandson with real love." I walked away from her, taking Ethan's hand, and went inside to clean up. The party ended in chaos. Guests left quickly, whispering to each other. Cameron's siblings approached me with apologies. The police arrived later because William had already filed charges against Natalie for fraud and identity theft. Turns out she'd stolen over $50,000 from company accounts using fake credentials. Cameron had been too blind and stupid to notice. That night, I sat in the master bedroom, my bedroom now, with Ethan asleep beside me and documents spread across the bed. Everything was mine. The mansion, the business, the money, the power. Cameron was in a guest room, completely powerless. I held all the cards now. For weeks, Cameron begged. He wanted counseling, therapy, another chance. Margaret sent flowers every single day. But I made them all wait. I wanted them to feel what I felt. Powerless, uncertain, scared. After 1 month, I called a family meeting. Cameron, William, Margaret, and my lawyer were present. I laid out my terms. Cameron had to get therapy for 6 months. He had to work a real job, not at the family business. He had to earn his own money. Margaret had to volunteer at a women's shelter to learn what real suffering looked like. I took over as CEO of the company. I fired everyone who had laughed that night and brought in my own management team. Within 3 months, profits increased by 40%. Turns out Cameron was terrible at business. He got a job as a sales associate at a furniture store, driving a used Toyota instead of a Mercedes, asking me for money for basic expenses. He lived in the guest house and watched every day as I ran his father's empire better than he ever could. After 6 months, I filed for divorce. But I wasn't cruel. I gave Cameron an entry-level job at the company where he could work his way up based on merit. He could see Ethan any time, but I was done being disrespected. Margaret transformed completely, finally becoming the grandmother Ethan deserved. William and I run the business together now, and it's thriving. That night, dripping in wine, I thought my life was over. I was wrong. It was just beginning. William didn't just give me property, he gave me back my power, and I used it. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Subscribe because I share stories about real people who refuse to stay victims. Comment below, would you have taken Cameron back or walked away? What would you have done with all that power? Share this video with someone who needs to remember their worth. Remember, never let anyone make you small. The quietest person in the room might just own everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where we talk about how I'm spending my millions. You won't want to miss it.